All right. Welcome to your personalized deep dive. This one is about the conflict going on in Ukraine. You've got a really fascinating mix of sources here.
Yeah, this will be good.
There's an account from a former U.S. mercenary on Rumble.
Okay.
And then there's that tense White House meeting.
Yeah.
You know, the one with Trump and Zelensky?
Yeah.
It was captured on a couple of YouTube channels, PBS NewsHour and Timcast IRL.
I've seen those.
Then we'll be taking a look at a UK Parliament briefing
Mm-hmm.
on the whole timeline of the conflict.
Right.
And there's also a European Parliament paper, which analyzes all the different proposed peace plans.
Well, I'm interested to see that.
Yeah. And along with all that, you've provided a bunch of articles and opinion pieces from all over the place. Really gives you a front row seat to this whole thing.
What's really interesting to me is how these sources all offer such different views on the conflict.
Oh, absolutely.
You know, you've got boots on the ground experiences,
Yeah.
and then high-level diplomacy stuff. Be interesting to see how all that fits together.
It really will. So before we jump in, what are you hoping to get out of this? What questions do you want answered?
Yeah, good question.
Keep them in mind as we go through all this together.
Okay, so why don't we start with that Rumble interview with the former U.S. mercenary?
That's good.
It's really a reminder,
Yeah.
you know, that we only get to see like a tiny sliver of what's really going on in these conflict zones.
He doesn't hold back about what he says he saw.
Really?
Yeah, alleges war crimes, even hints at CIA involvement.
Wow.
It's pretty intense.
Makes you think about how reliable information is when it comes from a war zone.
Yeah.
You know, how much can we trust those firsthand accounts?
Yeah, exactly.
And how do we know what's real and what's just propaganda?
It's like you're putting together a puzzle.
Yeah.
But there are pieces missing.
Right.
And the images are distorted.
This account, though, I mean, this one's really interesting because it brings up those questions about people from outside being involved, like that alleged CIA connection.
Makes you wonder about the stuff going on behind the scenes, you know?
Yeah.
And the people pulling strings that we don't even know about.
Okay, so moving away from the battlefield now to the White House.
Okay.
We've got that clash between Trump, Zelensky, and J.D. Vance, captured in those YouTube videos.
Like watching a poker game with really high stakes.
Right.
Everyone trying to get one over on the others.
It's really interesting to see how those two channels,
Yeah.
Timcast IRL and PBS NewsHour, they show the same event, but they frame it totally differently.
It's wild.
Like Timcast makes Zelensky look arrogant.
Mm-hmm.
And Trump is like the voice of the people.
Yeah.
But then PBS emphasizes how frustrated Trump is
Mm-hmm.
and how this could hurt diplomacy in the future.
Totally. Those different narratives, though, they really show how important media literacy is.
You know, how can the same event be shown in such opposite ways?
Right.
It means we've got to be critical about our sources and think about the biases they might have.
Absolutely. Makes you think about whose story you're actually getting and why they're telling it that way.
Exactly. So, what do you think about this whole clash? Is it real conflict, a power struggle, or something else?
Probably a bit of everything.
Yeah.
I mean, these are all strong personalities,
Right.
with different interests.
For sure.
Trump saying that the war would be over in 2 weeks, though, if the U.S. didn't help. That's interesting.
What do you think he's doing with that statement? Putting pressure on Zelensky, maybe?
Yeah.
To show that American support isn't a sure thing?
Okay.
Or maybe it's for the folks back home, you know, playing to his base, who want this to end quickly.
That brings up the whole question of other countries getting involved.
Right.
Like, we've got that Rumble analysis, the one that says if the EU sends in troops, it could lead to a huge war with Russia.
And that's a scary thought.
Definitely. It's this balancing act between helping Ukraine and not starting a war that could get out of control.
Makes you think about the consequences of getting involved at different levels.
Yeah.
And who decides when it's too risky.
Big questions.
Really complicated.
Yeah.
No easy answers. To understand where things are now, though, we need to rewind a bit.
Okay.
That's where that UK Parliament briefing comes in, the one with the timeline.
Yeah, it covers a lot from the invasion back in 22 to now.
Right.
Why don't we focus on a few key events just to see how it all played out.
Sounds good. So the ICC issuing that arrest warrant for Putin
Right.
in March of 23, that was a huge deal.
Yeah.
The ICC investigates war crimes and crimes against humanity.
Yeah.
It's a major international body. So them doing that, it showed how serious those accusations against Russia were.
And then just a month later, Finland joined NATO.
April 23.
Completely changed the game in the region.
That was a direct response to the invasion, for sure. Showed that the world was getting tougher on Russia.
Mm-hmm.
Suddenly, the stakes were way higher.
And then there was that, the Ukraine Recovery Conference.
Right.
And the Peace Summit in June of 24.
Yeah, a little bit of hope, maybe.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like much progress was made.
Sadly. It just shows that even when everyone wants peace, it's really hard to get there if everyone wants different things.
Totally. And that brings us to the European Parliament paper.
Right.
The one that looks at all the different peace plans.
Yeah, it's really interesting to compare Zelensky's 10-point plan to the Chinese 12-point plan.
Oh, yeah.
They have completely different worldviews and ways of handling conflict.
For sure. So Zelensky's plan and the Kyiv Security Compact, those focus on justice for Ukraine, holding Russia accountable for war crimes, getting back all of their territory, and setting up strong security guarantees so that this doesn't happen again.
Shows that they want more than just peace.
Yeah.
They want a just peace.
Yeah.
Where the aggressor, has to answer for what they did.
Right. The Chinese plan, though, while it does call for a ceasefire and talking things out, it avoids putting any blame on Russia directly. Their focus is on dealing with the humanitarian crisis, making sure things don't escalate further, and preventing the world economy from being used as a weapon.
So you've got these two very different paths to peace.
Yeah.
What do you think is most important for making a solution that will last?
That's a tough one.
It is.
It's easy to get caught up in the details of each plan, But I think the key is this. We have to understand what each side really wants and what they're afraid of.
Yeah, I think you're right. We'll dive more into that in part 2. Looking at all this, it's obvious this isn't just about land or politics.
Oh, definitely.
There's a lot of economic stuff going on, too, that we can't ignore.
That Bloomberg clip, the one with the supposed mineral deal between Trump and Zelensky.
Right.
That really brings those money motives to light. Even if we can't be sure about, if it's all true, it makes you ask some questions.
Yeah. Like, is this push for Ukraine to be independent, really, about securing valuable resources for the U.S.?
Yeah.
Things like lithium, cobalt. Or is it really about spreading democracy?
Especially with Trump and his America First thing and his focus on the economy and global affairs.
Right.
It wouldn't be surprising if he saw this as a chance to boost America's economic standing.
And if the U.S. might be after those resources, what about China?
That's the big question.
What are they trying to get out of this?
Are they really trying to make peace, or are they playing a longer game here? Maybe waiting for Russia to get weaker so they can, I don't know, take advantage.
Yeah.
Or maybe they want to increase their own power in the region.
It's like a giant chess game with countries as the pieces.
And each move can have consequences that we don't even realize.
Exactly. Which brings us back to the whole peace situation.
Right.
We've got these plans, but it seems impossible to bridge the gap between what Zelensky wants with justice and all that, and what China wants with stability and just talking.
They're coming at it from totally different places.
Zelensky wants Russia held accountable for, war crimes, wants all their land back.
Yeah.
And Russia doesn't seem willing to accept any of that.
And it's more than just negotiating points here.
Right.
It's about deep feelings, historical stuff. Can you imagine the pressure Zelensky's under to deliver justice for his people who have been through so much?
And on the other side, Putin seems like he won't give up.
Right.
No matter how long this goes on.
That European Parliament paper, it mentions this idea of a mutually hurting stalemate.
Okay.
It's where both sides are hurting so much that they finally have to,
really negotiate.
Yeah.
But how much more suffering will it take to get there?
And how do you measure that suffering?
Right.
We can talk about the number of people killed, the economic damage, but what about the mental and emotional toll? The broken trust, the fear, the uncertainty, all that stuff stays with you.
It's those human costs that often get forgotten in all this.
Yeah.
It's hard to think about the millions of lives ruined, families split apart, homes and communities just destroyed.
And even if they do come to some agreement, the scars of this war, they'll last for generations.
So where do we go from here? How do we get past this standstill and find a way to make peace that will last?
Complicated question. No simple answers. But that Odyssey article, the one about the power of stories, I think that's really relevant here. The stories we tell, the perspectives we focus on, the narratives we choose to believe, they have a huge effect on how people see this conflict.
Yeah.
And in the end, on how it gets resolved.
It reminds us that we all have a responsibility to be critical of the information we consume.
Yes.
To question our own biases.
Right.
And to look for different viewpoints.
If we just get caught up in those simple stories, good versus evil, us versus them, then we miss all the nuance, the shared humanity.
Yeah.
And the possibility of finding common ground.
That's so important. It's easy to get carried away by all the emotion around this conflict.
Right.
But to really find a solution, we need empathy, understanding, and a willingness to see past the surface. But we should probably unpack those ideas more in part 3. It's important to remember through all this, the strategies, the economic stuff. This is really about people.
Right.
Millions of Ukrainians. This is a human tragedy.
Those numbers from that UK Parliament briefing, they're hard to even grasp.
Over 10,000 civilians killed.
Yeah. So many families displaced. A whole nation dealing with the trauma of war and those numbers.
Right.
They only tell part of the story.
It's easy to get lost in the big picture, the geopolitical maneuvering, and forget that there are real people behind those numbers.
Imagine living with the threat of bombs all the time.
Yeah.
Not knowing if your home will still be there, if you'll have, food.
Right.
Imagine being afraid of losing your family or having to run from your country with just the clothes you're wearing.
All those articles, the research, they paint a really sad picture. I mean, the Ukrainians are resilient, but this war has taken so much from them.
Yeah.
Their lives, their communities, their hope for the future.
It shows us that peace isn't just about, signing papers or changing borders on a map. It's about putting lives back together, rebuilding trust, and healing from the wounds of conflict.
So what can we do?
Yeah.
And we're so far away.
Yeah.
It feels overwhelming, honestly.
It's normal to feel that way, but even small things can make a difference.
Right.
Supporting groups like the Red Cross, Doctors Without Borders, they're giving aid directly to people.
Right. I was really struck by one article that suggested supporting Ukrainian artists.
Oh, yeah.
Cultural things. It's about helping them preserve their identity, keeping their spirit alive in all this.
It's about realizing that peace building, it takes more than just the basics, like food and shelter. It's about supporting a country's long-term healing, their recovery.
We talked about the power of stories.
Yeah.
So maybe using our own voices to share the stories of Ukrainians.
Yes.
To speak up for peace, to challenge the people who want to divide us.
It's about changing the narrative.
Right.
From conflict and violence to empathy and, shared humanity.
This deep dive, it's been it's been a heavy one. I've learned so much, not just about the conflict itself, but about how strong people can be, even when they're facing such terrible things.
We've explored a lot of different perspectives, from the people on the ground to the leaders making decisions, and we've thought about some tough questions about responsibility, justice, finding a lasting peace.
This whole journey, it's been built from your sources, so hopefully you understand this conflict a little better now.
Yeah.
And maybe it's made you want to start some conversations. Think about your own beliefs and work towards a more peaceful world.
As we wrap up this deep dive, remember that peace isn't something you reach. It's a process.
Right.
And we all have a part to play in creating a future where conflicts like this, where they're just a memory.
Thank you for being with us on this journey. Keep asking questions, keep learning, and keep talking about these things.